Welcome to another edition of We Review Races from Hotel Rooms with Billy and Sam. So, this particular race was Boulder, Ironman 70.3 Boulder, which just happened today, Saturday, August 7th. So, let's dig right into it.
Transition and check-in. Check-in was the standard, what they've been doing this year with you sign up for a time and that time matters absolutely none. And then you go through, there was no COVID protocols. They were giving out masks.
They had a stack of masks available if you wanted to grab one this time instead of it being included with your race packet.
Yeah, so it's the standard red mask or whatever that would be.
Yeah, the half iron mask is just not as nice as the Ironman
as that
mask.
black one. Yeah, I mean it's pretty thin. It is two different materials or whatever, but whatever, it's a mask. Yeah. And then we got a bag. And this is the dry bag that we've been getting, but this one is blue and yellow, and it does have Boulder.
Fantastic. Excellent, Ironman. Well done. Love it.
Thank you so much. And then we got the shirt, Drytech shirt with the Boulder Ironman logo.
Yeah, and they did the Colorado symbol inside of the Ironman head. That was a nice little touch. I like it a lot. So kudos for that.
Transition, there were 8 bikes. There was one transit, T1 and T2 were in the same spot. Mm-hmm. There were 8 bikes per rack, and we got the shaft. I got the shaft. Sam actually did okay.
I did great.
We had end spots on each rack, but man, it was a tiny little area. It ended up being fine, but it was tight because you set up your stuff right at the minute. It wasn't bagged or anything. You set up your stuff right at transition. The bike in and out were at opposite ends, so there wasn't really a better spot because if you were going out, you had to take your bike a long way and a short way coming in, or opposite. If you happened to be on that center aisle, the center aisle was super wide.
Very nice.
Had trash cans, along the center, so when you were setting up, you could get rid of your stuff. Mm-hmm. Every other aisle was pretty narrow, and I was on the narrow side. Sam was on the wider side. I mean, that was really about the only advantage he had over me. Maybe was it easier to find your bike because you knew you were going to the wide aisle? I don't know.
Yeah. So when you went in, you had basically two rows of racks to your right and 2 or 3 rows of racks to your left, and then you could go down. But yes, the center aisle was extremely generous. Probably would have liked to have seen that kind of shrink down just a little bit to give some room to the people, on the other sides. But
I mean, it was luck of the draw. We got adjacent numbers, and his was on one side and mine was on the other. I don't know that getting there any earlier or later is going to be better. That was just, it was luck of the draw on that. Bike check-in and all that was exactly the same. Anything else we need to talk about on check-in and transition?
Yeah, this was the first time I think we've seen. So this is dynamic check-in. Yeah. Your race number was your thing, unless. If you were a relay, you were able to have a specific number and your name on your thing, or
Ironman Foundation,
the foundation spots, and they could have their name on their thing. So that was neat.
Pre-assigned. I guess they were pre-assigned their numbers and had their name on the bib.
With the dynamic, there were a fair amount of people who didn't show up. The race was sold out according to Ironman. Has been sold out for some time. And there was a whole rack that was empty.
I mean, we knew, like the guy last week, the race director last week said he wasn't coming. He had a rollover spot or from 2020 or whatever, and we knew he wasn't going to make it. So I'm sure there are people just like that.
Exactly. I don't. That is a downside to the dynamic numbering. I don't know how you solve that. So they were stacking in the bikes to get as many people as they could, but the downside was when people no-showed, whoever that last person was got lots of room, but there's no way to really react to that. So
I mean, I guess they could sell spots day of.
Typically, I have heard they have been. Hey, if you want a spot, come on.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see that encouraged a little bit more.
Or I guess they could oversell, but I mean,
I'm sure it's oversold at baseline. There's just no way of knowing how many of these, because I'm sure the COVID, roll downs. So interesting. So you got a banana score on check-in and transition?
I mean, it's what you expected. We do appreciate the named bag. Still like the dynamic. Cause so you can get adjacent spots. I didn't like the 8 bikes per rack. I would have liked to seen 6 or 7. I think the 8 is fine when you have bagged transition. I'll give it a 5.5. You get a little bit of bonus for the bag and the with the name on it, and take off a little bit for the close bikes and the close aisles.
Those aisles were a little small. So I'm giving it 6.5 just because my aisle was incredibly wide and very nice, so luxurious. So I felt like I was driving in the comfort lane.
You got upgraded to first class on the plane.
I did.
You had the wider seat. All right.
But it's that's something I expect they could fix for next year.
All right, moving on to the swim. Tell us about the swim.
So this layout was very interesting. The swim start and the finish line and transition are all really close together. This particular swim is a triangle out, across, and back. 5 buoys out. I could not figure out. I think it was 6 buoys across and then 5 buoys back, if I counted right. It was difficult to see the buoys from any one vantage point. So that was something. But you had a one boat ramp was the chute in, and another boat ramp was the chute out, and they were fairly close to each other. Lake swim, wetsuit legal. It was borderline the day before, but we got a rainstorm that night, cooled it off, and you got an email the night before that it was
I think they measured the temperature right after the rain.
They let it rain. Yeah. So that's what we've seen. We've come to expect that the races want this to be wetsuit legal. I'm sure there's probably extra safety included, but we all
Roca sponsors it, so Roca wants it to be wetsuit legal.
Yeah.
So they do everything they can to make it wetsuit legal.
So plenty of a wide chute. They were letting 3 per 6 seconds go. So you went out that first leg, you took the right, and then you got to stare at the sun for the long part of that triangle, and then you took the right again to come back in. They were letting us swim on the inside of the buoys, and that just makes all the difference in the world. We started with the 43 minute swim category, and that was a mistake. I got in the water, and there was a dude backstroking. And so I thought that was just a one-off, and there was another dude backstroking. So please, if you're planning on backstroking, start at the end. So this is your, I really, really, really wanted to hit him. I'm so sorry. Come on, guys.
It was not a mistake for me. That was my crew.
You were doing fine.
Yeah.
Once again, generally the time is an aspirational time for most racers, which drives me crazy. Just treat it as a real time. Come on, this is not a pool swim. It's a wetsuit. You're fine. They were backstroking and poorly because he swam straight across. And I'm lined up on the buoy, so I'm doing fine. And I'm watching this guy. I have to stop and breaststroke to let him by because he's an idiot. So, hi guy, if you're there, you're an idiot. So that's everything I know.
So for me, I mean the slower crew was for me. I hopped in the water and started swimming my regular stroke, and that ended up being a mistake. We swam the day before, and so we kind of had an idea of what we were dealing with. But with the high altitude, for whatever reason, the swim was the hardest for me. With the thinner air, or maybe it was smoke or whatever. Whatever the problem was, I had to stop. I stopped and hung on to one of the like permanent rafts or whatever, like temporary rafts that they have, but it's in like a permanent position. And I had to rethink how I was going to swim because what I was doing was not working. So normally the way that I swim is I take a breath every 3 strokes. So 1, 2, 3 on one side, 1, 2, 3 on the other side. And that was not working. The announcers, Charlotte told me the announcers on TV were when the female people were going out, they showed that all of them were doing what they call bilateral breathing or whatever, and that you can get hypoxia. And I guess that's what I got as I was going out. My heart was racing. I couldn't focus on what I was doing, and I was like, yeah, this just isn't right. So I stopped. I waited 30 seconds or a minute or so, calmed down, and I was like, all right, well, let's try doing I didn't know it was called bilateral breathing, but that's what I did. So every 2 strokes, I did a breath, and that ended up being fine. I mean, I calmed down after that. I sighted on every second breath, and it was pretty easy to sight. I swam on the inside of the buoys this time too. So. When you come, know that that's a possibility that you might have to adjust how you swim to make sure that you get enough air in your lungs to be able to keep going. So that was kind of my take on the swim.
Yeah, certainly this race is a mile high, and so we knew that oxygen was going to be tough or an issue here. And on top of that, there's a fire apparently in Utah.
Is that where it is? Yeah. It was very hazy the entire day, and it was windy, so I guess the wind was bringing in the smoke.
Just blowing around.
There's nothing Ironman could have done about that. I mean, that's like weather.
Not Ironman's fault. Probably, you might need to just go ahead and plan, on fire, on smoke. Breathing was already difficult, and that's certainly exacerbated any issues that anybody had. So yes, there were lots of people. I don't know. To be fair, I rarely see people grab boats or buoys or anything, and I counted at least 10. The Sea-Doo crossed my path, headed somewhere. So obviously there were some issues today. I had the same thing. I started swimming, and then I had to take a couple breaststrokes just to kind of figure this out. So the day before, they offered a swim from like 9 to something, maybe 7 to 9.
7 to 9, I think. You had to pay to do it, and of course we're so cheap we didn't pay. But you could get in the water and swim. There was a circle that you could do that was 200 yards that you could swim, so you could practice the swim.
Yeah. That circle wouldn't do anything good.
I don't know. I knew that I was having trouble breathing.
Yes, it was definitely, you noticed, as soon as we got in the water, the swim, just a test swim, it was more difficult than a standard swim, or a standard lake, absolutely.
So don't be afraid to stop and recalculate how you're going to do it. Know that that's a possibility, and even the pro swimmers were having to adjust how they did stuff. So That's just how it is. You got a score on the swim?
Yes, I'm going to take off for the swimming into the sun. I get that at some point you've got to go the way that they've laid out that course. You're stuck. I would have liked to have seen them maybe elongate the course to shorten where you were swimming directly into the sun. And then of course, I'm not going to take off for the swimmers. But I was expecting a lot better caliper swimmers. You had a lot of.
We just been starting earlier, and so they're better swimmers. That didn't have anything to do with.
I wasn't taking off for it. I was just mentioning.
Okay.
So yeah, the only thing I'm gonna take off for is the sun. Everything else was great. So I'm giving it a solid 6.
Yeah, I'll give it a 6 too. I hated the swim. That was probably my worst wetsuit swim in a long time.
Yeah,
but they set it up correctly. There was plenty of support. Mm-hmm. It was marked correctly. They let us swim on the inside of the buoys. The in and out. I mean, it's a lake swim, so I prefer a river swim. So I usually take off a little bit for that. But yeah, solid 6. It was a good swim.
Good swim. All right. So moving on to the bike.
The bike was better than expected for me. A fair amount better than expected. I'll have to go back and look at my data, but this one had 2,000 feet, according to the map. I hadn't looked on my watch, but it had 2,000 feet to climb, or a little bit more than 2,000 feet to climb. And there were 2, what I would say were big climbs. They weren't awful climbs, but we're going to call them 2 big climbs.
3. So it
3.
shows, the course shows 3, so that first...
Okay.
1, 2, and 3, and then they get
progressive. So there were 2 to me that were big climbs where I got into little front and big rear, and so they were tough, but they were relatively short, and they weren't like super steep up. One was a switchback that you went up, but what I liked best about those climbs is right after the climb, there was a long downhill for you to recover. And it wasn't like a steep downhill, but it was enough that you get up 25, 30 miles an hour and stay that way for a mile or 2. I mean, it was long enough to where you recovered from the climb. So I did like that. I didn't like the number of U-turns. There was a ton of U-turns. 4, maybe?
3 at least.
So I mean... They were in a good spot. They weren't like going downhill where you had to do a U-turn. They were pretty much on a flat, but it was a lot of U-turns.
Those first 2 were on that 4-lane divided highway. I mean, so you had a ton of space on that.
Right coming out of the chute, you go up and you basically do a U-turn. You go around the building.
That's your 4th. All right, yeah.
So I didn't like that, but the bike was fast for me. I mean, if it's a flat course, then I'm a 20 mile an hour guy. And this one, I probably did like 19.8 is what I'm guessing. I think it was faster than last week, and last week was a lot shorter. So I don't know why. I mean, it's not like I've gotten that much better between last week and this week. It must be the roads too, because it did rain on us last week.
Yeah.
But the scenery. So first of all, you have all of the Rocky Mountains, and you see that a lot. But other than that, there wasn't much scenery. It's not like you climbed up the Rocky Mountains and you got a view. I mean, you just basically saw the Rocky Mountains and that was it. But the only way that you're going to get that view is if they punish you and make you go up. So I was kind of appreciative of that. And even on the out and backs where you did the U-turn, I was able to see where Sam was because he was ahead of me, and I could see if I was gaining on him or losing ground. So if you're trying to compete with somebody and you know who they are, it's a good way to judge, if you're doing better or worse. So there are advantages to the U-turns, but you have to slow super way down. And if you have people in front of you that are unsure about a U-turn, they're going to slow down even further, and you can't really pass them because it's kind of narrow to get in there. So that part kind of stunk. But overall, I like the bike, and it must be a really... It's a sneaky fast course, and I don't know why, but it was sneaky. It was a lot faster than I thought that it would be. What are your thoughts?
So this was a very interesting course. You came out of transition, and then he's exactly right. You had to run out. I don't know, what would that be? 100 yards or so uphill. To the
50,
mountain
75.
line.
I don't even think it's 100.
So it's not super long. The Blue Ridge was much longer.
Yeah.
It didn't feel long, but I get it. Transition came out and you went up. It wasn't. I mean, it's not a terribly steep hill, but jumping out on your bike and climbing up that thing would have just been a disaster. So Ironman did the right thing there. But yes, you come out, you come do a short little U-turn around the parking lot, and come back up and pass everybody.
It was just an add-on, is what it looked like. They had to make the 56 miles, and so they added that. I mean,
they had these U-turns, so they could have precisely. I'm with you. It didn't. That little segment didn't feel super necessary, given that you could have played with the other U-turns. but you came out onto, it's a 4-lane divided highway. They had closed down half of it for us. So you got one full lane on the way out, and you got the other side of this, so you got 2 lanes of a 4-lane highway, one way on the way out and one way on the way back.
And they'd moved traffic all the way to the other side. So they just had
that
the other 2 lanes that normally went one way. They had, one lane going this way and one lane going this way. So that was super nice.
Then on top of that, you have, I don't know what to call that, whatever that. So I don't remember what that T you would call, but that segment of the course, you had 2 U-turns in, but they felt really wide. They were really comfortable. You still have to slow down because it's a U-turn. But I had absolutely no issues with those because you had them wide. So I actually passed somebody doing a U-turn.
That U-turn, you could pass
those
people.
U-turns, I'm not going to deduct anything for. Those were fantastic, well done. And then you went out and did a circle, and Billy's exactly right. Anytime they gave you an up, they gave you a down to recover. There's that one segment inside of the balloon where you just did this one extra add-on to make it 56. I got up to 45 going down that hill. Yeah, man, I was cooking it. And all I could think, because I'm watching bikers come up the other side.
And you're like, I gotta ride this again.
This is going to hurt so much in just a minute. But it wasn't actually that bad.
It wasn't.
The way the winds worked out today, there were some weird headwinds. It's a sneaky course. It's a fun bike. This is one of the most fun bikes I've done in the U.S. So I liked that. There was some, I don't know what to call it. On some of the roads, you have this super wide, basically shoulder, but it was a full lane. It was a full lane. So the roads weren't closed, but they had cones for our lane passing. You could not ride side by side and have anybody else.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a full lane. But if you stuck pretty far right, then somebody could pass you on the left. And there were a few segments of that. So I'm not going to call this a closed course.
Yeah, no,
because it was not that. So don't let them sell you that the course is closed. I never felt unsafe though. Mm-hmm. You had plenty of barriers between you and cars. They had closed. I mean, they closed a major highway for us. Yeah. So that was amazing. And where you were exposed to traffic, once again, felt perfectly fine. Plenty of police, as Ironman always does. So you got a score for us?
Before I give you a score, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the transition. The first transition was at mile 17.5, which was a little bit further than normal. But the other 2 were right at 30 and 45, so just like what you would expect. Just that first transition was a good bit further away than you would normally expect. And I mean, not transition, aid stations. Aid stations, 17.5. They had staffed plenty. I mean, it's what you would expect from Ironman. They were top-notch aid stations. I did see course support. There were a number of flat tires. A number of flat tires. And course support was out. They were helping people. People do not pump your tires up to 130. Just because it says it on the tire doesn't mean that's where it needs to be. So, anyway, that's pretty much all I have to add. I think I'm going to give it a 6.5. I mean, like I said, it's not the most scenic course. I'm going to take off a little bit for the U-turns, but it was much better than I expected. The roads were relatively good. I would say definitely above average.
Absolutely.
There were some places where it wasn't perfect, but I would say above average roads. So 6.5 for me.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to give it a 6 3/4. I just have to take up for that one U-turn. So it's coming. This is Boulder, mountain. Hill, know what you're getting, but the course profile laid in really well with what I experienced out there, and the last 10 miles was rolling, but generally rolling downhill, and so it was a great kind of cool down your legs from the bike and get them ready for the run experience. So
last half mile was uphill. After you turned into the park, that was uphill, and it was kind of a. I mean, I'm gonna say it was steep, but you weren't relaxing going into transition.
No.
So be prepared for that. After you turn back into the reservoir park or whatever, it's pretty much uphill the whole time, all the way back into transition. All right, so tell us about the run.
So this was an interesting run. I don't. So 2-loop course. You came out of transition, and within, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile or so, you hit where the U-turn was for the second, for people doing their second loop.
Right.
So along a dam, more off-road than on.
Yeah, there's a lot of trail running. I mean, what I would consider to be trail running is, wide, has the little small gravel.
Yeah. I don't know what else to call it. It was very hard packed, so not like a gravel road. A little bit dusty today. There was once again a lot of wind, and a lot of smoke. But you came out, hit that. There was aid stations every mile and a quarter, which has been consistent.
I think they were there. I mean, the way that I do my run walk cadence, they were a lot closer than a mile and a quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, they were. I mean, 3/4 of a mile. I mean, there were a couple of aid stations that were a little bit further than that, but there were a lot of aid stations.
Absolutely.
And they were well placed.
Very well done. Very well placed. Had absolutely no issues there. You got to run along the reservoir. Did you see the signs on the stream?
Oh, yeah. Death will occur. Certain death.
Certain death will occur. So at one point you're running and there's this beautiful looking stream, although it's got these concrete like check dams along it, and I'm slowly reading the sign, and it's rapid stream. The water goes underground. If you get in this stream, certain death will occur. I've never seen that in a sign, so it made me laugh. I'm certain it's very serious, but
It was
I wasn't getting in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no shade.
No, it was over. I mean, I don't know if you call it overcast as much. It was the smoke.
It was
blocking
smoky.
out the sun.
So yeah, we didn't have any sun problems. But without the smoke, that would have been a sweltering course. So
be prepared for that. For sure.
Know that there's no shade. But yeah, plenty of space. I never felt crowded. You're running along these, I'm going to call it dirt road / trail, but well used for running clearly. Fantastic. A few little hills, but
I would not call it
major.
flat. Yeah, it's not flat, but the hills were not bad.
No. The course profile felt a little worse than it actually was. To be fair, there was once again, we're not acclimated to the altitude, and so I got to the top of that hill and had to walk a little bit to catch my breath. But that wasn't a fitness problem. That was I need air. But yeah, fantastic run. You got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, so when we're in transition, we got to transition early this morning, and so we basically had to sit around for an hour. And while we're sitting around for an hour, of course, we're going to be talking to people.
Yeah.
And there was a guy next to us who said that that you needed to be prepared for the altitude. Probably wouldn't bother you on the swim or the bike, but it would bother you on the run. Well, it bothered me on the swim. It didn't bother me on the bike, but I purposely came up with a different, a little bit slower pace for the run. Still had what I would consider to be a pretty good run, but it was definitely a different, a little bit slower pace. And it was good for me. I liked that run. The aid stations were good. The people around me were fun to be around. It was 2 loops, so you got to do the first loop and know exactly what was going to happen on the second loop. At one time I didn't like those multiple loop courses, but now I kind of like them. So the dam was a little bit narrow because you had basically half the dam was going one way and half the other, and so you had, if you had two people that were running side by side, you had to go into the other lane to get around those two people. That was about the only place where it was too narrow. I mean, there were some corners or some downhills or whatever, but I think it was set up really well. Seems like there were some out and backs on the run, and those don't bother me as much on the run because you don't have to on the bike you have to slow way down to do this. On the run you just turn around and you get to see whoever you passed, or you could talk to people. So I liked the run. I enjoyed it. Although I still have all kinds of boogers and stuff in my nose from the smoke, I guess is what it is.
Yeah. Between the dust and the, just know that it had rained yesterday and it was still very dusty.
Yeah, it was pretty dusty.
You can't put 1,500, 2,000 people out on a dirt road without it getting dusty. Yeah. So, that's just part of it. But yeah, certainly the smoke was an issue.
But I liked the run course. I don't if are we doing ratings, I guess.
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess I'll give it a 6.5. I'm trying to think of what they could do better. And I don't even really know what they could do better. Can you think of anything that they would?
There's nothing I would change. No, that's a great. There's plenty of people, so it never felt desolate. I'd love to have some music or something.
Shade. If it was hot today, yes, we would have probably given it a lower score because you would want shade.
Yes,
but.
So yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to give it 6.5. There's really nothing to change.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing they could change to that course. So probably deserve a slightly higher score. So the finish line.
Finish line was, and like you said in the beginning of the review, the finish line. Did we walk through the finish line to go through the swim start?
No, it was just immediately to your left.
I've never seen a swim start and a finish line in the exact same place because that's pretty much where it was. But the finish line chute ran through. There was a fair amount of grass that you ran through, and I got to the grass and I was like, "This isn't going to be good." But it was fine. It didn't bother me. I like the finish line. The medal. You got the medal. We got the hat and the medal together. The hat does say Boulder on it.
Woohoo! All right, well done.
You, Ironman.
Yeah, so we're going through the finisher chute, and I see white hats, and all I can see is the Ironman at the top, and I was like, oh no! But yes, I was absolutely pleasantly surprised. So medal is pretty good.
That's a nice medal.
Yeah, I've got.
I mean, I guess we've been giving scores for the finish line stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, since they've changed where they're giving us the stuff we want, we got to give it a 7, don't we?
I'm gonna give it a 6.5.
The food was forever away.
Yeah, the food was not close, and so yeah, there's certainly that. The food, it was in the right spot for parking and for checking out, but basically you're gonna want to finish, go get your bike. Well, sorry, if you're slow like us, finish and go get your bike. If you've got time because you're an everyman jack, go get you something to eat, probably get a massage, whatever else they do, and then go get your bike. But it's a little ways. I would have liked to see finisher on the hat somewhere.
Now you're getting greedy, man.
And they've been on the other hats.
Oh, does it say finisher on the other hats?
Finisher on them.
Okay.
I'm not saying year. I'd always love to have year, but I'm not taking points off for that. We're recognizing COVID. I've got no issues. But yeah, just a hint off and fraction off for that.
I think you got to rethink your score, man, because I think you got to give bonus points for hot showers after the race.
Oh, is that counting against? Is that finish line?
I mean, that was at the venue right after we finished.
So food for the other races has been as much as you want.
Did they? And they had little tickets.
This time they had tickets, and so to be fair, it was a veggie burger, a sausage dog, and a cheeseburger. And when I grabbed a hot dog and a burger, nobody gave me any grief. I got chips, got a couple of drinks. So you could only go through the line once.
But they were selling it too. They were selling it to the public, and maybe that was the deal. Athletes, it was free, but it was like a $17 meal for the public.
Yeah.
So, but at where the food was, there's like a pavilion or whatever, and like indoor stuff, and they had locker rooms and stuff. So they were telling people don't go in there, but
everybody was in there.
It was open, and you could go take a shower. So that was nice after the race.
So yeah, I'm gonna give it 6.5. There's nothing I can change.
Well, you already gave it 6.5. I was telling you need to give bonus points.
Nope, still 6.5. But yeah, the hot showers were awesome. It made it very possible to shower at the race, which is what we did, and leave.
All right, so give me an overall for the race itself.
Overall, I'm gonna give this a 6 3/4. I really enjoyed this race. I really encourage this race. It's not easy, but worth it. You know, the swim is the swim, and certainly breathing's an issue, but that's kind of an us issue, not a race issue. The bike was just a blast, and the run was really fun. You know, the hills all were there, fit into the course for the bike. So you know, I loved it. So not you know. I like when hills make sense, not, hey, I'm going to make you come up that mountain and then come back down it. This was, hey, you know, this is the way the course worked out, and this made for a fun course. So yeah, it's great. What about you?
6.5. I mean, it was I would highly recommend the race. Great race. Pretty much it.
Town, did we give a rate to the town?
Yeah, so the town is awesome. You got any thoughts on that?
You're out in the middle, you're out at the reservoir, you're out in the middle of nowhere. We stayed in Longmont.
Yeah, not Boulder. But we did stuff in Boulder.
We did stuff in Boulder.
And Boulder's a really cool place to go.
Certainly worth seeing. The race was kind of removed from the town. So as far as a town goes, this was a blast, and I highly recommend you visit it. But there was no real town interaction with the race so far as you had some spectators, but you know, nobody out in front, nobody on the course that's not true. For the bike, yes, there were people at the end of their driveways along the bike course cheering us on, but the run course had nobody. So, you know,
I mean, can you take off for that? I don't guess. I mean, It was out in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't close to Boulder.
No.
It was kind of halfway in between Longmont and Boulder. So if you're looking for a place to stay, either one of those actually works.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 6. I'll take off a little bit for that.
I'll agree with you.
So yeah, but town's super friendly. The people that we talked to in town, because of course we're wearing Ironman gear, super friendly. Yeah, highly recommend it.
All right, next week we have a double. Starting off in Washington State and then heading to Arizona. So
who thought this up?
I know. We're going to see. That should make for an interesting video.
All right, so stay tuned.